Hello everyone, welcome to this video about the AWS Lambda integration in WSO2 API Manager. I am Sanjula Madhurapperumal, a trainee software engineer at WSO2, and without further ado, let's get started. In this video, we will cover a few important topics. First, we'll go through what AWS Lambda is, the advantages of using AWS Lambda over a standard server-based architecture, and the integration of AWS Lambda in WSO2 API Manager, where this feature can be used by either providing stored AWS credentials or IAM role supplied temporary AWS credentials. What is AWS Lambda? AWS Lambda is a compute service that runs code without the provision of or hosting of servers. The code that runs on AWS Lambda is basically called the Lambda function. Amazon exposes AWS Lambda functions through a variety of services such as Amazon S3, Amazon DynamoDB, Kinesis, and AWS SDK. What are the advantages of using AWS Lambda? The first one is minimal cost. The code is only executed when needed and scales automatically to accommodate any spike in usage, which takes off the burden of managing resources such as memory, CPU, and network. The second one is automatic scalability. Due to the serverless nature of AWS Lambda, an organization would find it extremely convenient that Lambda functions are able to handle rises in API usage with ease by scaling itself automatically. Then we also have easier operational management. These overheads are reduced drastically because completely serverless solution like AWS Lambda does not require the same level of system administration compared to managing your own server. This is also in addition to the built-in fault tolerance functionality that ensures that Lambda functions are always available. Lastly, we have fast application development. Due to the lack of operational overheads and scalability issues that need to be addressed when an application's requirements grow, it means that an organization can focus on the actual development of the application itself rather than its environment. Now one may wonder, how can we invoke Lambda functions over HTTPS? There are two main ways of invoking an AWS Lambda function over HTTPS. This includes using Amazon API Gateway to create RESTful APIs and using the AWS SDK. Integrating with an existing API management solution would go a step further to conveniently make the shift to AWS Lambda without the hassle of completely moving to the Amazon Cloud platform. The ability to invoke a Lambda function in an existing API management platform will be more convenient than having to adjust a different development environment just to be able to perform the same. Furthermore, in a production environment, it is very likely that AWS Lambda functions exist for each process that occurs in an application. For example, in an e-commerce application such as this, there may be an AWS Lambda function for searching the marketplace and another for adding items to the cart, so on and so forth. This would prove to be a challenge when these Lambda functions must be exposed to a client bundled together as part of the same API. This problem can be solved in an API management platform by allowing the API developers to attach different AWS Lambda functions to each resource in an API so that they can be presented as a nice, clean, bundled package in an API to the users. In this scenario, a client sends a post request to the add to cart resource, and the API management platform will then invoke the add to cart function with the provided credentials, as the add to cart resource is attached to a Lambda function called add to cart. The AWS Lambda service will then redirect this request to the add to cart function, execute the specific code, and then return the response to the API management platform. The API management platform will then return the response back to the client. Now we will move on to the AWS Lambda integration with WSO2 API Manager. WSO2 API Manager now has the ability to invoke AWS Lambda functions using either stored AWS credentials or IAM role supplied temporary AWS credentials. The second option would be ideal if you have an instance of WSO2 API Manager running on AWS EC2 instances and you also want to manage other AWS services using this new feature. Using the stored AWS credentials method would be ideal if WSO2 API Manager is not running on an AWS EC2 instance or AWS Lambda functions are hosted in a different AWS account. When using the stored AWS credentials method, The API developer only has to carry out two simple steps. The first is to go to the AWS IAM console, generate and retrieve the AWS credentials, and then add the AWS credentials to the API Manager in the form of the access key ID and the secret access key. Using this method would be ideal if WSO2 API Manager is not running on an AWS EC2 instance or AWS Lambda functions are hosted in a different AWS account. It is not necessary to enter the root credentials of an AWS account, though it is possible to. It is highly recommended to create a separate user role with sufficient permissions to access Lambda functions and enter that particular user's credentials and the region where the AWS Lambda functions exist. If WSO2 API Manager is running on an AWS EC2 instance, it is recommended to use the IAM role supplied temporary AWS credentials method. A valid role with the necessary permissions to access Lambda functions must be attached to the EC2 instance beforehand by the API developer. Selecting this option will generate temporary AWS credentials from the EC2 instance itself. However, please note that the Lambda functions and the AWS EC2 instance with WSO2 API Manager installed must exist in the same AWS region as shown here. The API developer creates a new IAM role with the relevant permissions, attaches the IAM role to the EC2 instance running WSO2 API Manager, and then selects the IAM role supplied temporary AWS credentials method and attaches the AWS Lambda functions in the same region to the relevant API resources. It is only then that the APIs with the attached Lambda functions are exposed to the client. Now we will move on to the demo. We will see how we can use the stored AWS credentials method to invoke an AWS Lambda function. I am in the process of creating a new REST API in the publisher. We will select AWS Lambda endpoint. We will use this option, using stored AWS credentials. Here, we will enter the access key, the secret key, and then select the region. In this case, I have my AWS Lambda functions in US East 1, so I'm going to select that, and then click on Save. From here, let's go to the Resources tab and attach the AWS Lambda functions to each resource. For the search, we'll select search function from the drop-down menu. Add to cart, it will be the add to cart function. For my account, it will be my account function. Click on Save. Also remember to publish this API by going to the Lifecycle tab and clicking Publish. We will go to the developer portal, subscribe to the API, generate an access token, and then go to the Tryout tab. With the tokens applied to the access token field, let's go ahead and invoke the function. Let's apply the sample payload here and then click on Execute. There you go. We have a 200 response, and this response is coming from the Lambda function. Now we will move on to the IAM role supplied temporary AWS credentials method. I have created a new REST API in WSO2 API Manager that is running on an EC2 instance. We'll go to Endpoints and select AWS Lambda endpoint. Here, you can see I have selected using IAM role supplied temporary AWS credentials. We'll go ahead and save it. Now let's go to the Resources tab and attach the AWS Lambda functions to each resource, just like before. As you can see here, there's also an option to set the timeout in minutes and seconds for the Lambda function. After making the required changes, we can click the Save button, publish the API, and go to the developer portal to invoke the API, just like we did for the stored AWS credentials method. As you can see, the result is a 200, giving the expected output just like before. So far, we have learned what is AWS Lambda, the advantages of using AWS Lambda over standard server-based architecture, and also gained an insight into how we can invoke AWS Lambda functions over HTTPS. Then we also looked into the AWS Lambda integration in WSO2 API Manager and how there are two main ways to invoke Lambda functions through that integration. One was using stored AWS credentials. Another was using IAM role supplied temporary AWS credentials. The advantages of this feature was then demonstrated by invoking an AWS Lambda function using both stored AWS credentials and IAM role supplied temporary AWS credentials. We have now come to the end of this video, but before you leave, I highly encourage you to go and check out the webinar done by Fazlan Nasim and Amelia De Silva on this AWS Lambda integration. The link will be down in the description below. A link to the documentation page where you can see more in-depth details on how to use this feature will also be in the description of this video. So go ahead and check it out. Finally, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and hit the subscribe button along with the notification bell so you'll be notified of any new videos that are coming up in this channel. Thank you. See you in the next one.